You can have access to the most advanced artificial intelligence ever built and still use it as a Google search alternative. What is productivity? What is investing? How do I improve my life? And then ChatGPT gives you like 7 bullet points that sound like a motivational poster meme. Like set goals, build habits, stay consistent, believe in yourself. Thank you, machine, humanity saved. But the problem may not be that AI is too shallow. The problem may be that you give it nothing to work with, because artificial intelligence does not magically replace your clarity. It amplifies the clarity you already bring. And a philosopher who died decades before the first home computer may have explained why. Ludwig Wittgenstein famously wrote, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." That sentence sounds like something an insufferable philosophy student puts on their social media bio after reading like 9 pages of a book, but it points to something painfully relevant today. If you lack the words to describe a problem, you also lack the tools to properly investigate it. You cannot ask a precise question about something you cannot clearly identify. And you cannot use AI as an intellectual leverage when your entire prompt is basically, "Computer, please give wisdom. ChatGPT, give me 10 methods to get rich." And no, this video isn't just about more context and all these past copy-paste 10 amazing prompts. No, it's about what you should do after you get your first reply from the chatbot. Today we are diving into Wittgenstein, language, reality, large language models, and why asking one vague question before wandering away is an enormous waste of one of the most powerful thinking tools ever created. You are underprompting your large language model, and to explain why and how, I will use the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein to bring my point across. Let us begin with Wittgenstein's actual idea. His early philosophy is laid out in a short, dense, and notoriously difficult book called Wait, I got that on the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. Jesus, that's a mouthful. I didn't read it because I can't read, but ChatGPT helped me summary slopping the whole thing. We're just gonna use good old Wittgenstein to bring my point across. We don't want to take him apart here. After all, I'm not a philosophy major, I'm a self-improvement shitposter. So after not understanding a thing, I asked ChatGPT to dumb it down for me and got this. You look around and you clearly see things. A desk, a computer, a coffee cup. Bear with me for a second here, it gets better, I promise. But Wittgenstein's point is that reality is not merely an inventory of objects. What matters is how those objects relate to one another. The cup is on the desk, describes a fact. The computer is connected to the monitor, describes another fact. The ashtray has achieved consciousness and is planning a coup, may describe a future fact. Objects can exist in different arrangements. For the early Wittgenstein, language works because propositions can picture possible facts. The sentence has a logical structure, and the structure corresponds to a possible situation in the world. The cat is sitting on the chair makes sense because you understand the objects, the relationships, and the possible state of affairs. The chair is sitting on the cat is also meaningful. It may be unfortunate for the cat, but we can picture it. But language is not powerful merely because it contains many words. Language is powerful because it allows us to represent distinctions, relationships, and possible states of affairs. It gives structure to experience, and that structure determines what you can meaningfully examine. When Wittgenstein said the limits of his language mean the limits of his world, he's not simply saying buy a dictionary and unlock the power of the universe. He's concerned with what can be expressed through logically meaningful propositions. Your ability to reason depends heavily on the distinctions you are capable of representing. Consider someone who says, I feel bad. The statement communicates something, but it doesn't communicate much. What does it mean? Overwhelmed, bored, nausea, mentally overstimulated? Each word opens a different path of investigation. If you call every unpleasant state feeling bad, then many completely different problems collapse into one vague blob. You cannot properly investigate the cause because you have not identified the experience, and you probably cannot choose an effective response either. Rest might help exhaustion, but rest may make boredom worse. So the added vocabulary does not merely make your sentence sound more intelligent, it creates distinctions. Those distinctions reveal different structures within the problem. The same applies to technology. Imagine a computer is slow. What does slow mean? CPU overload, memory pressure, network latency. The word slow is not wrong, it's simply too broad to help much. The moment you acquire more precise concepts, the problem changes. The machine did not physically transform, but your ability to describe its behavior improved. And because your description improved, your possible actions improved as well, which is leverage. A useful concept compresses a complicated pattern into a form you can manipulate. Take the term opportunity cost. Without that concept, you may understand that choosing one thing prevents you from choosing another. But the idea remains loose and implicit. Once you learn the term, an entire pattern becomes easier to recognize. Spending 2 hours on one task does not nearly cost 2 hours. It also costs whatever else those 2 hours could have produced. The concept gives you a reusable mental object. You can carry it between finances, work, relationships, time management, or business. The same is true for concepts just as compounding, feedback loops, technical debt, selection bias, regression to the mean, or cognitive overload, or whatever. Those are not fancy labels you collect to cosplay as a public intellectual. At least they should not be. Each concept allows you to notice a pattern faster. And once you can name a pattern, you can compare examples, test assumptions, and ask better questions. The concept expands your practical world. You start seeing something that was present all along, but previously you lacked a stable shape in your mind. And this matters enormously when you use AI and LLMs. Modern language models are built around patterns in language. The transformer architecture that helped enable today's LLMs was introduced in the 2017 paper Attention is All You Need. Very roughly, transformer models process relationships between tokens and use context to predict useful continuations. And the actual systems are complicated. If you really want to get into the technical stuff of AI and LLMs, I really recommend the videos by 3 Blue 1 Brown. They are amazing. Warning, lots of math, lots of computer science, but it's awesome. I put the video in the description down below if you're interested. So let's continue. But You do not need to understand every matrix multiplication to grasp the central absurdity. We have built machines that can process enormous structures of language, and millions of people use them by typing, "Give me business ideas," basically. That's like gaining access to an industrial laboratory and asking whether water is wet. An LLM can connect your questions to concepts, patterns, and examples found across vast amounts of text, but your language determines which region of that possibility space you activate. Compare these two prompts. Prompt 1, how can I be more productive? Simple prompt, but the AI has almost no useful context. It does not know whether you are overwhelmed, distracted, overcommitted, disorganized, exhausted, or simply avoiding one emotionally unpleasant task. So it produces the statistical center of generic productivity advice. Make a list, set priorities, remove distractions. These answers are not necessarily wrong. It is just what your question deserves. Now compare it with this. Just an example. My task system captures work reliably, but I keep adding small maintenance tasks faster than I complete them. Help me distinguish necessary operational overhead from compulsive optimization. Analyze this using opportunity cost, diminishing returns, and system reliability. Now there's structure. It sounds like it came from someone who likes to smell their own farts, but who cares? The prompt contains distinctions. The problem can be examined through multiple frameworks. The AI has something to work with. You have supplied intellectual coordinates. And you did not achieve that by memorizing a sacred prompt template. You achieved it by understanding the problem well enough to name its parts with words. People often talk about AI as intelligence flows only in one direction. You ask, the machine provides intelligence, but a useful AI conversation is interactive. The quality of the result depends on what you notice, what you challenge, and how you refine the question. AI can reveal ideas you did not know, but you still need enough understanding to recognize whether the answer is relevant, shallow, contradictory, or completely fabricated. If you ask a broad question, you receive a broad answer. Then you have two options. Option 1, accept the first response, copy it somewhere, and announce that artificial intelligence is overrated. Option 2, interrogate it. What assumptions are you making? What would contradict this? Give me a concrete example. Now apply it to my situation. What concepts am I missing? How would an expert disagree? Separate correlation from causation. What are the second order effects? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Every follow-up question narrows the territory. It introduces another distinction. It tells the model what kind of depth you are looking for. This has been my own experience again and again. The most useful insight usually does not appear in the first answer. It appears after many follow-ups. The first prompt establishes the topic, then the real conversation begins. I ask why, then I ask a follow-up question, then I ask what follows from that, then I challenge one assumption. Then I notice that one term is vague, and so I ask AI to define it. And suddenly the definition introduces another idea. I follow that idea. Eventually we arrive somewhere genuinely useful. The value does not come from typing one genius sentence. It comes from staying inside the conversation long enough to develop the thought. This is why treating ChatGPT exactly like Google wastes so much of its potential. A search engine is often used to retrieve just a page or a fact. An AI conversation can help you transform an unclear question into a clearer model of the problem. Searching is not bad. Sometimes you just need to know the capital of Slovenia, or you want to make carrot soup or whatever. You do not need a dialectical journey through nature of geography or cooking for that. But if you're exploring complicated decisions, systems, or ideas, asking one question and leaving is like calling an expert. He says 4 words and you immediately hang up the phone and then complain that the conversation lacked depth. The phrase prompt engineering has attracted an entire ecosystem of templates, secret formulas, and people selling PDFs containing phrases such as act as a world-class expert. Sometimes structure helps. Giving the model a role, desired format, examples, and constraints can improve the output. It will improve the output. But prompt tricks cannot replace conceptual understanding. You can write act as a world-class systems thinker with 40 years of experience, but if you cannot describe your system, its components, its goals, its bottlenecks, its trade-offs, the AI is still being asked to professionally hallucinate around a fog cloud, you know? The most important part of prompt engineering is not decorative wording. It is problem formulation. What exactly are you trying to understand? Which facts matter? Which constraints are real? What have you already tried? A strong prompt often contains already the beginning of a strong answer because writing it forces you to structure your own thoughts. This creates an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people get poor results from AI because the model failed, but sometimes the model exposes that the user has no clear model of the problem, and as we say it in tech, it's a layer 8 problem. In this scenario, these people want the AI to remove the need to think. Instead, AI returns a polished reflection of their confusion. The output is beautifully formatted, the underlying thought is still soup. Learning terminology can improve your thinking, but knowing words is not the same as understanding concepts. You can memorize second-order effects and start inserting it into every conversation like a philosopher on weed. That does not mean you understand it. A word becomes useful when you can explain it simply, recognize real examples, distinguish it from similar concepts, that's very important, apply it to a new situation and use it to make better predictions of decisions. Otherwise, it's intellectual decoration. This matters with AI because LLMs are extremely good at generating intellectual decoration. They can produce a paragraph full of sophisticated terminology that creates a sensation of depth without doing much actual work. The language sounds precise, but the reasoning may still be hollow. So whenever AI gives you a new concept, do not merely collect it, interrogate it. Ask the AI again, what does this mean in plain language? How is it different from this related concept? Now the vocabulary becomes a tool rather than an accessory. You are building a conceptual framework or network in your head. And the more connected that network becomes, the more leverage you have in future conversations. Here's the good news. You do not need to already possess all the vocabulary required to use AI effectively. AI itself can help you discover the concepts that you are missing. Suppose you describe a situation. I keep improving my workflow, but every improvement creates new maintenance. I save time through automation, yet I also spend more time managing my automation. What the hell is going on? And then ask, What established concepts describe this pattern, and the AI might introduce you to automation paradox, complexity cost, diminishing returns, technical debt. Now you have handles. You can ask which of those concepts best fits your situation. How would I distinguish healthy improvements from over-engineering? The conversation becomes increasingly precise, and you can begin without the vocabulary. But instead of stopping at the first generic answer, you use more follow-ups to expand the language available to you. The AI itself helps create the tools needed to question the AI more effectively. That is a feedback loop worth exploring. The better your concepts become, the sharper your questions become. The sharper your questions will become, the more useful the answers become. Better answers introduce further concepts, and those concepts improve the next conversation. It's intellectual compounding. You do not need a library of 900 prompt templates. You need a few reusable questions that force the conversation beyond the obvious. Let's do some examples. Question 1. What am I failing to distinguish? Vague problems often contain multiple problems fused together. I lack motivation could mean exhaustion, fear, unclear priorities, low reward, excessive friction, or resistance to one specific task. Ask the AI to separate them. Question 2. What concept describes this? This turns an isolated experience into something you can investigate. Once the AI gives you a term, verify the definition and explore related concepts. Do not blindly trust the first label it produces. Question 3. What mechanisms cause this? Many weak answers merely rename the observation. Why am I procrastinating? Because you are avoiding the task. Excellent. Nobel Prize incoming. Ask what process links the cause of the behavior. Question 4. What would prove this explanation wrong? This attacks the confirmation bias. AI models are often very capable of agreeing with whatever framing you provide. Ask for counter-arguments, alternative explanations, and disconfirming evidence. Question 5. What should I ask next? This may be the most valuable one. When you reach the edge of your own vocabulary and concepts, ask the model to propose the next question. And not just any question. Ask what follow-up question would an expert ask before reaching a conclusion. Now the model can expose gaps in your framing. You still need to judge the questions, but you no longer depend entirely on already knowing what you do not know. Wittgenstein was not writing about chatbots. Trying to turn an old philosopher into a commentator on artificial intelligence probably creates some weird historical fan fiction, but his work gives us a powerful lens. The world available to you is shaped by the distinctions your language allows you to express. And today, language is not only how you communicate with other humans, it is also an interface through which you access machine intelligence. That changes the value of articulation. Being able to describe a problem clearly is no longer just useful for writing essays, winning arguments, or surviving meetings that should have been emails. It determines how effectively you can direct computational systems. In the end, the person who can identify relevant concepts, express constraints, and ask precise follow-ups can extract far more value from the same AI model than someone who cannot. They have access to the same machine, but not the same leverage. That does not mean people with smaller vocabularies are doomed. It means language development has become a practical, technical skill. Read outside your normal field, learn the name of patterns, ask for definitions, compare frameworks, practice explaining difficult ideas simply. When you encounter a vague word, unpack it. When you receive a generic answer, refuse to stop there. When the AI uses a term you do not understand, investigate it instead of just gliding over it while pretending everything is fine. Every useful concept adds another coordinate to your intellectual map. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. Taken in its original context, Wittgenstein's claim is deeper and stranger than a slogan about vocabulary, but its relevance to AI is hard to ignore. You cannot direct a language model toward distinctions you cannot express. You cannot easily test an answer when you do not understand its concepts, and you cannot expect depth when you ask shallow questions and abandon the conversation after one response. AI does not automatically make your thinking clear. It amplifies the clarity you already bring to the table, but it can also help you develop that clarity if you keep asking questions. So the next time ChatGPT gives you 7 predictable bullet points, do not immediately blame the machine. Ask what you failed to specify. Ask what concepts are missing. Ask for mechanisms. Ask which questions should come next. The first answer is often not the result. It is often the beginning of a thinking process. And the more precisely you can describe your world, the more of that world becomes available for you to examine, question, and change. Tell me in the comments which concept completely changed how you understood the problem once you finally had a name for it. And if you want more videos about knowledge, systems, technology, and using the internet without gradually turning your brain into a warm paste, subscribe to the channel, because the machines are getting more and more capable. And the question is whether we are becoming more capable of talking to them. That's it. Join the botnet for the almighty algorithm. Peace out.